The man in the 12-year-old Honda with the sun-faded paint, packing lunch from home, carrying a wallet held together with a rubber band, and the man 3 parking spaces over, climbing out of a leased German SUV in fresh sneakers and designer everything. One of these two has a net worth north of $2 million. The other is one missed paycheck away from the whole thing falling apart. And the part that tends to bother people is this: it is almost never the one you would bet on. Real wealth in America has learned to go quiet. Over the next half hour, you are going to learn exactly how to recognize it. 10 signs that someone is genuinely rich, even when every surface detail screams that they are broke. How does a person end up sitting on 7 figures and still look like they are barely getting by? Start with a number most people find hard to believe. There are nearly 24 million millionaires living in the United States right now, according to the most recent global wealth research from UBS. The country is minting them at a rate of more than 1,000 new ones a day. That works out to roughly 1 in 15 American adults. Sit in a coffee shop with 30 people in it, and statistically, 2 of them have a 7-figure net worth. Now ask yourself an honest question. Could you pick them out of that room? Almost nobody can, and that blank spot in your radar is the whole point. The loud spenders you assume are wealthy are usually the ones drowning quietly behind the scenes, while the people genuinely building money have no interest in advertising a single dollar of it. Before we get into the list, hold on to one idea, because it explains all 10 signs at once. Income is not wealth. Income is the money that flows in, and it is loud and easy to see. Wealth is what quietly stays, the gap between what you earn and what you spend, multiplied by time. A surgeon pulling in $500,000 a year who spends every cent of it has a huge income and almost no wealth. A plumber earning a fraction of that who saves and invests a steady slice of every check can quietly become the richer of the two. Social media has only made this harder to see, because every feed is engineered to show you the income, the cars, the trips, the renovations, never the boring brokerage balance underneath. The genuinely rich learn to ignore the performance and play the quiet game instead. My name is Jude. Every week I break down the real mechanics behind building wealth, the part that looks nothing like the Instagram version. Subscribe and hit the like button if this one changes how you see a parking lot. Let's get into all 10 signs. Sign 1. They drive a car that tells you nothing. The average new car in America crossed just over $50,000 at the end of 2025, an all-time high. The average monthly payment now lands around $770. More than 1 in 5 buyers have signed up for payments above $1,000 a month. People doing that are not the genuinely rich. They are renting the appearance of wealth and paying interest for the privilege. The actually wealthy move in the other direction. Research behind The Millionaire Next Door found that the typical millionaire spends only about 1% of their net worth on the car they drive. Run that on a person worth $2 million and you land near a $20,000 vehicle, often bought lightly used and kept for the better part of a decade. The most common brands are not the ones on billboards. Toyota, Honda, and Ford keep showing up at the top of the list, chosen because they start every morning and cost almost nothing to keep running. Sign 2. They live in a house that is smaller than they can afford. The genuinely rich tend to buy the modest house on the ordinary street, the one that costs far less than the bank told them they qualified for, and then let the difference compound somewhere else for 30 years. The reason is simple once you see it laid out. Every extra bedroom is more property tax, more insurance, more square footage to heat and cool, more furniture to fill rooms nobody walks into, and far more money that never gets the chance to grow. A bigger house feels like a reward you earned. For most people, it quietly becomes the anchor that keeps them from ever pulling ahead. The genuinely rich understand that a home is partly a place to live and partly a money decision, and they refuse to let the second part wreck the first. Take Curtis, a retired high school shop teacher. Curtis drives a 16-year-old pickup with a small dent in the tailgate that he has never bothered to fix. To anyone glancing over, he looks like a man on a fixed pension, counting his pennies. His brokerage account tells a very different story.
well into seven figures, built one paycheck at a time across a 30-year career. When people ask why he does not finally treat himself to something new, his answer never changes. A car is a tool that moves him from one place to another, and the truck does that flawlessly. So why hand a dealership $40,000 to solve a problem he does not have? That faded paint and that little dent are not signs of struggle. They are the visible receipt of a decision that quietly funded his freedom.
Sign 3. Their clothes and their watch give away absolutely nothing. Genuinely wealthy people are notoriously hard to read at a glance because they have stopped using their bodies as a billboard. The logos are gone. The watch, if there is one, is more likely to be a sensible everyday piece than a status symbol you're supposed to recognize from across the room. They were plain, well-made basics that last for years. Compare that to how status spending really works. The flashier the brand, the louder the message, the more likely you're looking at someone trying to convince the world, and probably themselves, of a station they have not quite reached. There is even a name for this now. People in the wealth world call it stealth wealth, and it has quietly become the dominant style among those who actually have money. Sign 4. They go quiet whenever money comes up. Listen at any gathering and you will quickly notice who narrates their own spending. The genuinely wealthy are almost never that person. They have a strange and consistent habit of saying nothing about prices, income, or purchases. Part of it is strategic. Talking about money invites comparison, requests, resentment, and judgment. But the bigger reason is that for them, money has stopped being exciting. It became plumbing a long time ago, and nobody throws a party every time the plumbing works. Think about Walt, a man who ran a small heating and cooling business for 30 years before selling it. Ask Walt what he does, and you will get a shrug and the word retired. Spend an afternoon with him, and you would never guess he quietly owns the building his old shop sits in, rents it out, and collects more in monthly income from that one property than most people earn at their jobs.
Sign 5. Their money is invisible because it is always working. The genuinely wealthy keep the bulk of their money in places you will never see at a dinner party, and they feed those places relentlessly, year after year, mostly on autopilot. Look at what the system actually allows in 2026. You can put $24,500 into a 401k this year. On top of that, $7,500 into an IRA. If you are on a high-deductible health plan, you can stuff $4,400 into a health savings account as an individual or $8,750 for a family, an account that gives you a tax break going in, tax-free growth while it sits, and tax-free withdrawals for medical costs coming out. Many also get an employer match, free money that pushes the combined limit all the way up to $72,000 a year. And once the genuinely rich fill those tax-advantaged accounts, they do not stop. They keep going into a taxable brokerage, buying broad, boring index funds month after month, decade after decade, never touching them.
Max out a 401k at this year's limit and earn a historically normal 7% return. After 30 years, you were looking at roughly $2.5 million from that single account alone. Take Nadia, a hospital nurse on a perfectly ordinary salary. Nadia drives a hand-me-down sedan and brings her coffee from home. Most of her co-workers assume she is just careful with a tight budget. What they do not see is that she has quietly maxed every account available to her for over 15 years, and her net worth has crossed a threshold that would stop them cold if they ever learned the figure. Her wealth is enormous and completely hidden because it lives inside a brokerage statement instead of on her wrist or in her driveway.
Sign 6. They owe almost nothing to anyone. Americans now carry more than $1.2 trillion in credit card debt, a record. The average interest rate on the balances people actually carry hovers right around 22%. A balance left sitting at that rate roughly doubles the cost of whatever you bought in a little over 3 years. Buy a couch for $1,000, ignore the statement, and you have effectively paid for 2 couches while only ever sitting on one. The genuinely rich live on the far side of that equation. They use credit cards heavily, sometimes for many thousands of dollars a month, chasing the points and cash back and free flights, then wipe the statement clean in full before a single cent of interest can attach itself. Freedom from payments is freedom, full stop. When none of your money is already promised to a lender before you even wake up, every dollar you earn that day is genuinely yours to direct.
Sign 7. They stay calm when money goes wrong. Watch how a person reacts when the unexpected bill lands, because financial pressure is a kind of truth serum. Maybe the transmission gives out on a Monday morning, or the water heater quietly floods the basement overnight, or the job disappears with 2 weeks of notice. For most households, any one of those alone is an instant 5-alarm emergency. The genuinely rich meet that same bad news with an almost unsettling calm that grows directly out of a real emergency fund sitting quietly in the background. Here is the mechanical part where almost everyone leaves money on the table. Put $20,000 in a competitive high-yield savings account, and it earns about $800 a year while you sleep. Leave that identical $20,000 at the national average, and it earns about $76. Park it at one of the big-name banks paying next to nothing, and your reward for the entire year is roughly $2. The rich-looking person and the broke-looking person can be holding the exact same balance, yet one quietly collected $800 and the other collected enough to buy a cheap sandwich. Sign 8. They buy the good version once and then keep it for years. There is a quiet pattern in how wealthy people shop that on the surface looks like spending more rather than less. They buy the well-made boots, the solid wood table, the reliable appliance, and they pay a genuine price up front. But here is the move that flips the whole thing. They then keep that item for 10 or 15 years while the person trying to look rich churns through 3 cheap replacements and 2 trendy upgrades in the same window. Take Marisol, who bought one high-quality leather bag 14 years ago and still carries it daily. The leather is scuffed and the corners are worn soft, and a stranger might assume she cannot afford a new one. The reality is that she has spent less on bags over those 14 years than her co-worker spends in 2. Cheap turns expensive the moment you have to buy it 5 times. Sign 9. They have made complete peace with the word no. The genuinely rich are remarkably comfortable declining the small social status-driven expenses that quietly drain everyone around them. A destination bachelor party in another state might simply not make the cut this year. A group dinner at the restaurant that does not fit the week gets a polite pass. Consider Dean, who got a substantial raise 3 years ago and changed essentially nothing about how he lives. His apartment is the same, his car is the same, his weekly routine is the same, and the entire raise now flows straight into his investments before he ever sees it. To his friends, who all upgraded their lifestyles the moment their own incomes rose, Dean can look almost stubbornly cheap. What they miss is that he spends generously and without flinching on the 2 or 3 things he genuinely cares about, then goes completely silent on everything else. That selective spending, that willingness to disappoint the crowd, is not deprivation in disguise. It is the quiet discipline that funded a freedom they cannot see.
Sign 10. They have stopped trying to look rich because they finally are. At some point, the genuinely wealthy simply stop performing wealth because the performance was always a substitute for the real thing, and they no longer need a substitute. All the energy that other people pour into looking successful gets redirected into things that do not photograph well at all. Time, flexibility, the ability to walk away from a toxic job, a bad client, or a deal that does not feel right. The capacity to put a kid through college without loans, to quietly carry a struggling parent, to take an ordinary Tuesday off without asking a single person for permission. They are not anxious when the bill arrives, not performing for the table, not secretly running the math in their head about whether they can really afford the thing they just smiled and agreed to. That low background hum of money stress that follows most people through their entire lives has simply gone quiet for them. It is, in the end, the whole reason to build wealth in the first place. Not the car, not the house, not the watch. The freedom to stop worrying and start living on your own terms.
Go back to that parking lot from the very beginning. The man in the leased SUV in his fresh designer everything, and the man in the 12-year-old Honda with his lunch packed from home. You can read it now, can't you? You can see which one the bank statement actually loves, and it is not the one the entire culture was built to applaud. Every one of these 10 signs points back to the same uncomfortable truth. Looking rich and being rich are two completely different skills, and the people who master the second one almost never waste their time on the first. The faded car that was paid off years ago, the plain clothes chosen for comfort instead of applause, the telling silence whenever the conversation turns to money, the easy, guilt-free no to the things that drain everyone else, and a stack of full accounts that you will never lay eyes on. Those details are not the wreckage of someone who lost the game. They are the fingerprints of someone who quietly went out and won it.
If this changed how you see a parking lot, hit that like button and subscribe. Every week I break down the real mechanics of wealth, not the Instagram version, the actual one. And if you want to understand the specific account structures and net worth milestones that make signs 5 and 6 possible, the video on the 3 net worth levels maps exactly what changes at each one and what to do to get there. That's right there. I'll see you in it.